Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into something really fascinating, an ancient practice that, well, our sources suggest is a kind of shortcut to some profound understanding. We're talking about mindfulness of breathing. You might also hear its Pali name, Anapanasati.
Yeah, and it's important to frame this historically. Nowadays, we hear a lot about mindfulness, almost exclusively sometimes. But back in the Buddhist time, concentration was incredibly highly regarded, often overlooked today, maybe.
Right.
The Buddha himself, according to the text we're looking at, was pretty direct. He said, oh, recluses develop concentration. Why? Because those who have concentration see things as they really are.
And that really sets up our mission for this deep dive, doesn't it? We want to unpack the source material and see how this concentration works. It's not just about being calm, is it? It's described as a kind of microscope for wisdom.
Exactly. A microscope, helping us see what the texts call ultimate realities directly, cutting through the confusion, the doubts.
So we're going beyond just the how-to.
Oh, definitely. We'll get into the surprising why it's so crucial and what these deep meditative states actually are, which is often misunderstood. Plus, practical advice, but also some genuinely mind-bending insights into consciousness itself.
Okay, so you've set the stage. This concentration sounds powerful. Let's unpack that.
Yeah.
Why bother? What does it actually give us, according to these sources?
Well, the core idea is that concentration is the proximate cause of insight. That's the direct link. A concentrated mind is described as, well, radiant, pure, united, malleable, objective, free of prejudice. It's like sharpening a tool.
Sharpening the mind to see clearly.
Precisely. And when you turn that focused mind inward, you can penetrate the truth of things. You see the ultimate realities without distortion.
So the number one benefit is this profound insight, seeing things as they really are. What does that look like in practice? What do we actually see?
It's about seeing the five aggregates of clinging, our body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, consciousness, seeing them for what they truly are. Which is radically impermanent, always changing, thoroughly unsatisfactory, meaning they can't provide lasting happiness, and utterly impersonal. There's no fixed, enduring self in there. Penetrating this directly leads to seeing the root cause of suffering craving, which itself is grounded in ignorance, and crucially, seeing how suffering ceases when you remove those causes.
That's huge, a fundamental shift in understanding reality. But beyond that deep insight, are there maybe more immediate benefits, something that feels good right now?
Absolutely. The texts are clear.
Yeah.
Deep concentration also provides a blissful abiding here and now. Talk about arahants, fully enlightened beings using these deep states, these jhānas, to temporarily transcend the burden of the physical body. They can just dwell in this incredibly blissful, unified state for maybe a whole day. It's a happiness that, well, is said to surpass any ordinary worldly pleasure, a real sanctuary.
Okay, now here's where, for me, it gets really interesting, intriguing, maybe even a bit out there. Our sources talk about supernatural powers. Seriously, is that part of this concentration package?
According to the sources we're examining, yes. It's presented quite directly. Mastery of these refined meditative states, the fine material and immaterial jhanas, is described as the basis for developing what are called mundane psychic powers.
Mundane psychic powers. Like what?
Things like remembering past lives in detail, developing the divine eye, which is clairvoyance, the divine ear, clairaudience, knowing the minds of others, even seeing how beings are reborn based on their karma. And yes, the texts do mention things like levitating, flying, walking on water, passing through solid objects.
Wow.
The key point in the texts is that these aren't just random occurrences. They're abilities developed and brought under conscious control through mastering jhana.
That's a lot to take in. What about longer-term effects? Does cultivating this impact what happens after we die?
It does. The sources explain that developing jhana, really mastering it right up to the moment of death, can actually condition your next rebirth. Specifically, it can lead to rebirth in a fine material plane, a very blissful existence, free from physical pain.
So maintaining that state as the last conscious moment.
Exactly. That powerful, concentrated state of mind becomes a very strong karmic influence, shaping where consciousness re-arises. You need mastery, though, entering, exiting at will, and holding it.
The sources also use this great analogy concentration as a safe haven, like a fort for a warrior. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, it's a powerful image. Imagine a warrior fighting a hard battle. They get tired, maybe wounded. They need to retreat to a safe fort to rest, recover, regroup, right, before going back out to fight.
Makes sense.
Jhana is like that fort for the inside meditator. The battle here is the internal struggle against ignorance and craving what the texts metaphorically call the war with Mara. Jhana provides a temporary release, a safe place to rest, recharge the batteries, find bliss and strength before diving back into the challenging work of insight. It's vital.
Okay, so the benefits are clearly profound, ranging from deep clarity to blissful states, even these, well, extraordinary abilities and better rebirths. But how do we actually get there? The sources mention, what, 40 different meditation subjects? Why are we zeroing in on mindfulness of breathing for this deep dive?
That's a really important question, because the Buddha definitely taught a variety of methods. Different subjects suit different temperaments, different personalities, and they lead to different levels of concentration, too. For instance, contemplating death might get you to access concentration, which is sort of the entry level to deeper states. Whereas mindfulness of breathing, along with practices like focusing on colored discs, called kasinas, or cultivating the sublime abidings like loving kindness, these can lead all the way to the fine material jhānas.
And even beyond.
Yes, focusing on things like boundless space or boundless consciousness can lead to the even more subtle, formless, immaterial jhānas. So there's a whole spectrum.
So given that range, what makes mindfulness of breathing in Anapanasati stand out? Why focus on this one?
Well, several key reasons emerge from the texts. First, it's considered one of the most popular and, relatively speaking, easy to learn, accessible. Second, and this is significant, it's the Buddha to be actually practiced under the Bodhi tree on the night of his enlightenment. That gives it a certain prestige.
The enlightenment practice itself.
Exactly. Plus, it's incredibly practical. As the texts say, we are breathing all the time. It's always available wherever you are, whatever you're doing. No special equipment needed. And the Buddha himself praised it very highly. He called it both peaceful and sublime, an unadulterated, blissful abiding. And he noted how it banishes at once and stills unskillful, unprofitable thoughts just as they arise.
Sounds pretty effective.
It's even called the foremost meditation subject for supremely enlightened Buddhas and many of their key disciples. So it has a strong pedigree, you could say.
All right, decision made. We're committing to the breath. So let's get down to brass tacks. What are the practical first steps? How do we actually do this?
Okay, foundation first. Posture. You want to sit comfortably. Cross-legged is traditional, maybe half lotus, or just with your legs evenly on the floor. If that's difficult, say for older people or those with injuries, sitting upright in a chair is absolutely fine. The key is keeping the body erect, straight, not twisted, alert but relaxed.
And there's a crucial point about tension, isn't there?
Yes, very crucial. The instruction is to release any tension in the body. And the sources add a fascinating layer here. They suggest this tension might actually be the physical manifestation of hidden attachments, or maybe resentments towards yourself, other people, or just your current situation.
So it's a mind-body connection right from the start.
Absolutely. You consciously let go of that holding, that tightness. It allows both mind and body to settle into a state of ease, which is essential.
And the focus point. Where exactly do we watch the breath? I know different schools teach different things.
Right, and the sources we're drawing from are very specific on this for an Anapanasati aimed at jhana. You become aware of the breath around the nostrils or on the upper lip, wherever you feel the touch of the air most clearly.
Just at that one spot.
Just at that one spot. It explicitly advises not to follow the breath into the body, not up into the head, not down into the chest or abdomen.
Why not? That seems counterintuitive.
Because following it, the texts say, scatters the attention. It prevents the mind from becoming truly one-pointed, which is the goal here. Think of the simile they use. A gatekeeper at a town gate. The gatekeeper doesn't follow people into town or out into the country. They just stand at the gate and notice who comes and goes.
Ah, okay. So you just notice the breath passing that point, the gate under the nostrils.
Exactly. In, out. Just observing at that single point.
Now, what about effort? You mentioned earlier that trying too hard can backfire. That seems tricky.
It is tricky and a very common mistake. The texts point out that many meditators don't realize that the more effort they exert, the more restless they become.
So gritting your teeth and really trying hard isn't the way.
Not here. The effort is subtle. It's the effort to notice, to be aware, not the effort to control or force the breath. You let the breath be natural. There's an anecdote mentioned comparing foreigners in Burma, often very goal-oriented, with local yogis. The observation was that ease and consistency are much more valuable than hard struggle, driven by anxiety about results.
Ease and consistency. Okay, so it's about mind control, not breath control.
Precisely. Do not attempt to control your breath, instead control your mind. Let the breath do its own thing. Your job is to gently, persistently bring the mind back to the sensation at the nostrils, letting go of fantasies, plans, doubts, even subtle analysis like, is it warm? Is it cold? Those shift the object.
And letting go of expectations, too, you mentioned.
Yes, crucial. An expectation, the texts say, is a subtle form of greed for the Dharma, wanting a certain result, wanting jhana now. That desire just creates tension. You have to let it go.
But the mind will wander, especially at first. It feels inevitable.
Oh, absolutely. The Buddha acknowledged this. The mind wanders at will. It's natural. Don't get discouraged or beat yourself up about it.
Is there a technique for when it's really jumpy to just settle it down initially?
Yes. One of the key commentaries, The Path of Purification, suggests the counting method as an aid. After each full breath cycle, in and out, you mentally note the count. In-breath, out-breath 1, in-breath, out-breath 2. Up to 8 is common.
Why up to 8?
Well, they suggest not less than 5, which can be too simple, or more than 10, where the mind might fixate on the numbers instead of the breath. It's just a range. Use it just long enough for the mind to settle down and stay with the breath more consistently. Then you drop the counting. It's a temporary scaffold.
Okay, so the counting helps stabilize. Once things are calmer, what's the focus then?
Once the mind settles, maybe after, say, half an hour or so, you stop counting. Then you simply observe the natural quality of the breath. Is it long? Is it short? You just notice without controlling it, like sitting on a riverbank, as the simile goes, just watching the water flow. You don't try to speed it up or slow it down.
And the key is staying only with the breath.
Absolutely critical. Continuous mindfulness. If other sensations arise, an itch, a sound, a thought, you acknowledge them perhaps, but you don't shift your primary attention. The breath at the nostrils remains the sole object. The sources use another simile. Making fire by rubbing two sticks together. You need continuous friction. If you keep stopping and starting, the heat dissipates.
Ah, okay. Consistent, uninterrupted attention builds the heat of concentration.
Exactly. Any break, and the momentum cools down. Continuous attention helps concentration develop much more quickly.
Now, as the mind gets quieter and the focus deepens, the sources talk about a common hurdle. Physical pain often seems to arise, but they frame it quite surprisingly, not just as a problem to get rid of.
That's right. It's a really profound teaching embedded here. It prompts the question, how do we relate to pain? Is it just an enemy, or can it be a teacher? And the texts confirm, yes, often when the mind really starts to settle, underlying physical discomforts that were previously ignored can come to the forefront.
And our usual reaction is just make it stop.
Exactly. Aversion, which is a form of ill will, one of the hindrances. But the text suggests this experience, if approached wisely, offers 4 incredibly valuable lessons.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What are these 4 lessons from pain?
First, it cultivates self-restraint. If we experience pain and we really don't like it, which is natural, it serves as a direct reminder not to inflict pain on others. It makes empathy practical.
Makes sense. What's the second?
Compassion. Recognizing that pain is a common experience, especially for meditators sitting for long periods, fosters compassion, both for our own struggles and for others going through the same thing. It connects us.
And the third lesson?
This one goes deeper. Pain reveals the inherently unsatisfactory nature of both our body and our mind. It shatters the illusion that this body can provide lasting, reliable happiness. The Abhidhamma analysis even suggests things like intense anger can generate subtle fire element energy that literally feels like it's burning the body.
Wow.
And it's the mind that knows the pain. Without mind, the physical sensation isn't registered as suffering. So both body and mind, in their changing nature, are seen as ultimately devoid of satisfaction.
That's a sobering thought. And the fourth lesson sounds perhaps the most radical, understanding the impersonal nature of this body we call ours.
It is radical. Pain demonstrates forcefully that the body does not yield to our wishes. We want it to be comfortable, it becomes painful. We want it to be healthy, it gets sick. There's a powerful quote from the Buddha. If the body is mine, it will not inflict pain. Because it is not mine, it inflicts pain. Thus, we should cultivate equanimity towards it.
So the pain itself isn't the core problem.
According to this view, no. The physical sensation is just sensation, an aggregate of materiality, an imbalance of elements. What makes it truly unbearable is our identification with and clinging to pain as my pain. Seeing it impersonally helps cultivate the courage and equanimity needed to face not just meditation discomfort, but also illness, aging, and eventually death.
But what if the pain is just too much, if it's causing genuine distress, not insight?
That's an important practical point. If the pain leads to dismay and agitation rather than understanding, the advice is clear. It's better to mindfully change your posture. Do it slowly, deliberately, keeping your attention on the breath as much as possible throughout the movement. Don't just react impulsively.
Okay, good to know. Now, even if we manage pain, the sources describe other major roadblocks, these corruptions of mind, the 5 hindrances. What are they and why are they such a big deal?
They're a very big deal because, as the texts say, they make the mind dark, unwieldy, intractable, basically impossible to attain jhāna with. They cloud everything. The key approach is threefold. Know what causes them, actively avoid those causes in your daily life, and apply specific antidotes when they arise during meditation.
Right, so first hindrance, sensual desire. We want nice things, pleasant experiences. How does that block concentration? The sources use a vivid image here, right?
They do. Sensual desire, kamachanda, is the longing for pleasant sights, sounds, smells, tastes, physical sensations, even just pleasant thoughts or memories. It's likened to trying to hold on to 6 wild animals tied together: a snake, crocodile, bird, dog, jackal, monkey, each pulling violently towards its own preferred environment. Your mind is just scattered, pulled in all directions.
That's a great image for inner conflict. Does it include attachments to people or comfort too?
Oh yes. Strong attachment to loved ones, craving a comfortable bed, anticipating delicious food. These can all act as significant obstacles. A mind caught up in sensual desire is compared to water tinted with a fusion of different colors. It's so stirred up and murky that you cannot make out one's own reflection. You lose clarity.
So how do you work with that? What are the antidotes?
Several are suggested. Reflecting on foulness, which sounds grim, but means contemplating the less pleasant aspects of the body, its impermanence, its eventual decay. This helps counter attraction. Also, diligently guarding the sense doors, basically. Keeping your attention anchored on the breath instead of letting it latch onto every passing sight or sound. Moderation in eating is often mentioned, and cultivating supportive spiritual friendships is huge. The Buddha apparently said, noble friendship is the entire spiritual life. Engaging in talk that encourages detachment, peace, and wisdom is also key.
And a bit of tough love, too, reminding ourselves we have to leave it all anyway.
Exactly. Why not practice detachment now?
Okay, hindrance 2, ill will, anger, resentment.
Bhayapada. Yes, any form of aversion, annoyance, resentment, hatred, disgust. It could be directed at yourself, at others, maybe the person coughing next to you, or just the situation. An angry mind is described as being hot like boiling water. Obviously, you can't get concentrated or calm when you're boiling inside.
What cools that down?
Reflecting on karma, the understanding that our actions have consequences and others' actions are their own. Karma helps depersonalize things. Sympathetic companionship. And consciously cultivating thoughts of loving kindness, compassion, patience, tolerance, engaging in talk that fosters these qualities.
Third hindrance, sloth and torpor. Sounds like feeling really sluggish and mentally dull.
That's the nimitta. Physical heaviness, mental inertia, lack of energy or enthusiasm. Often the texts suggest it comes from not really seeing the value or benefit of the practice, lack of inspiration. The mind in this state is likened to stagnant water overgrown with water plants, heavy, obscured, murky.
How do you wake yourself up from that?
Reflecting on inspiring stories can help tales of great effort, like the monk who supposedly crawled when he couldn't walk, or the Buddha's own intense striving before enlightenment. Contemplating impermanence and the potential for suffering, seeing the urgency as if threatened by a murderer with drawn sword, can arouse energy. And practical things. The Buddha suggested a sequence like recognizing the state, reflecting on the Dhamma, maybe doing some physical actions like rubbing limbs, splashing cold water, walking meditation, taking a brief mindful nap if truly tired, and again, moderation in eating.
Number 4, restlessness and remorse. The jumpy mind.
Uddhaka-kukuka, exactly. Restlessness is the mind scattering, planning the future, rehashing the past, flitting from thought to thought, like a monkey jumping from branch to branch, or like a fish tossed out of a pond, flailing desperately. Remorse is getting stuck, regretting past unskillful actions. Both create agitation and prevent the mind from settling. It's a state of powerlessness.
How do you study that? It seems like a tough one.
Persistent, patient effort is key. The simile used is taming a wild calf by tying it to a post. The mind is the calf, the breath is the post, mindfulness is the rope. You just keep gently bringing it back. But again, balance is crucial. Too much forceful effort can cause restlessness. You need to balance energy with tranquility, concentration, and equanimity, like using wet grass and cool water to gently extinguish a bonfire, not fanning the flames.
And for the remorse part, getting stuck on guilt.
Recognizing that remorse over past actions, while perhaps understandable, is ultimately unhelpful now. It's unskillful because it just drains energy and prevents progress. The story of Angulimala, a notorious murderer who reformed and attained enlightenment, is often cited to show that letting go is possible no matter the past. Worrying, the sources say, is just a drain on our energy. This hindrance makes the mind like agitated water whipped up by the wind, no clarity.
Finally, the fifth hindrance, skeptical doubt, lack of confidence.
Pichikicha. Yes, uncertainty, indecision, lack of faith or confidence in the practice, the teacher, or your own ability. Thinking, what's the point? Can this breath thing really lead to jhāna? Can I do it? This doubt makes the mind like muddy water lacking clarity. It undermines effort and perseverance.
How do you counter doubt?
It often starts with choosing to place trust in the teachings, in a qualified teacher, asking clarifying questions, listening to Dharma talks, studying, reflecting continually on what's skillful and unskillful, seeing the results in your own experience. Overcoming these five is essential. They are the corruptions of mind that, as the texts state, make it unwieldy, not radiant, and unready for attaining jhāna.
Okay, so let's assume we've managed these hindrances at least reasonably well. The mind is calmer, clearer. What's the next step on this inward journey? The sources talk about approaching access.
Right. So as you consistently maintain focus on the breath, long or short at the nostrils, you naturally progress to what's called experiencing the entire breath body. This doesn't mean feeling the breath in your torso. It means being aware of the entire duration of each in-breath and out-breath as it passes the nostrils, from its very beginning to its very end. Like the gatekeeper, fully attentive to each arrival and departure.
So a more complete awareness of the breath cycle at that single point.
Exactly. And this sustained, unbroken attention is what really starts to unify the mind, bringing it towards one-pointedness.
Can you mention balancing the mind like a goldsmith?
Yes, that's a key simile here. A goldsmith refining gold has to carefully balance things. Blowing with the bellows effort, sprinkling water, calm concentration, and examining the gold, equanimity mindfulness. Too much blowing, the gold overheats. Too much water, it cools too fast. Similarly, the meditator needs to balance concentration, effort, and equanimity. Too much concentration without enough effort can lead to dullness. Too much effort without enough calm leads to restlessness. You need that skillful balance to keep the mind pliable, bright, and workable.
Then comes calming the bodily formation. This is where the breath gets really subtle, right?
It does. You make a gentle mental note or intention. May my gross breath be calm, sort of inclining the mind towards subtlety, and gradually, without forcing it, the breath becomes smooth, subtle, and calm all by itself. At this stage, many meditators report they no longer clearly feel the physical nose or even the body. It's like there's just only the breath and the mind concentrating on it.
Just the breath and awareness.
Right. And the sources say at this point, there is no I or other, only the concentrated mind fixed on the breath. Self-consciousness fades. Worry, anxiety, unskillful thoughts are temporarily cut off. This brings you very, very close to access concentration.
And it's around here that this sign, the nimitta, might appear. This seems like a pivotal, maybe confusing moment. What exactly is it and what should we do?
It is pivotal. The nimitta can arise when the mind reaches this level of calm and unification. But the first crucial instruction is, do not immediately jump your attention to it. Stay with the subtle breath sensation at the nostrils.
Even if this interesting light or image appears?
Even then. In fact, just before it appears, the breath might become so fine it seems almost to disappear. That's not a problem. It's a sign you're on the right track. The instruction is to heighten the level of mindfulness right there. The first time the sign appears, it's often called the preparation sign, parakammanamitta. It might look like a gray color, like a puff of smoke near the nostrils. It's usually unstable.
And the risk is getting distracted.
Exactly. Most people get excited. Wow. Or maybe even a bit scared. What's that? And lose their concentration. And the sign vanishes. The key advice is emphatic. Just continue to concentrate on the breath. Ignore the sign for now.
So, you stay with the breath. Does the sign change or become more stable? When do you shift focus?
As your concentration deepens and stabilizes further on the breath, the sign will likely reappear. This time it might become clearer, whiter, like cotton wool. This is the learning sign, Ugahanamitta. Its appearance can vary. Some see a star, a light, a pearl, a cloud. The texts say these specific forms aren't really important. What is important is guarding it carefully.
Guarding it how?
The simile is powerful. Guard it carefully as a king's chief queen guards the child in her womb. Meaning, don't interfere with it, don't try to play with it, change its shape, make it brighter, move it around. That disrupts the concentration holding it.
Okay, protect it by not messing with it. When is it safe to engage?
Only when the learning sign has become really stable. maybe holding steady for half an hour or so, and your mind naturally, effortlessly seems to fix on it, then you can gently allow your attention to sink into the sign. Let it become the new object, replacing the breath.
And what if it appears somewhere weird, like off to the side?
Good point. If it appears far from the nostrils, the instruction is to ignore it. Keep focusing on the breath point. It will tend to reappear closer to the focus of concentration, near the nostrils, where it should be.
And this eventually leads to the counterpart sign, the really bright one.
Yes. When the mind remains steadily fixed on that stable learning sign for a longer period, maybe 1 or 2 hours, it transforms. It becomes clear, bright, then brilliant, like a crystal or diamond or morning star. This is the counterpart sign, Vaibhoga Nimitta. Its appearance marks the attainment of either access concentration or full jhana itself.
What's the difference? Access versus full jhana.
Access concentration is like being right at the doorstep of jhana in the neighborhood, as some texts say. The hindrances are suppressed, the mind is calm, but the jhana factors aren't fully developed or strong yet. There's also a risk here of slipping into bhavaga, a kind of subconscious, peaceful blank state that isn't active concentration and can be mistaken for nibbana if you're not careful.
How do you avoid that slip and enter full jhana?
By consciously balancing the 5 controlling faculties: faith, confidence, effort, energy, mindfulness, awareness, concentration, stability, and wisdom, understanding, keeping the mind actively engaged with the counterpart sign, not drifting passively.
And when those faculties are balanced, that's the doorway to jhana.
That's when concentration goes beyond access. The factors that define jhana become fully developed and strong. This state is described as extremely serene, and it's called jhana, the texts explain, because it burns up the 5 hindrances completely while you're in it. They simply have no power to arise.
What's it like in jhana? Can you hear things?
In true jhana, the mind is continuously and effortlessly absorbed in the counterpart sign, potentially for hours. The sources state clearly that one neither hears sounds nor falls into the bhavaga mind state. Now, sometimes meditators think they heard a sound while in jhana, but the analysis suggests this is actually a sign of momentarily slipping out of jhana due to insufficiently strong concentration, registering the sound, and then immediately re-entering. In deep, stable jhana, the external senses are said to be offline.
Fascinating. And after you emerge from such a deep state, what do you understand about it? You mentioned jhana factors.
Right. After emerging, the meditator is advised to reflect, turning their attention to the heart-mind door, described as luminous and reflective, to discern the characteristics, the factors of the state they were just in. For the first jhana, there are 5. First, initial application of mind, vitakka, the act of directing the mind onto the object, the sign, like a bee diving towards a flower. Second, sustained application of mind, vikara, keeping the mind connected to, anchored on the sign, like the bee buzzing around the flower. Third, joy, piti, a sense of zest, thrill, rapture, keen interest, delight permeating the body and mind. Fourth, happiness, sukha, a calmer, more sustained, pleasant feeling. The Buddha called this chronic happiness something that surpasses all mundane happiness. And fifth, one-pointedness, ekaggata, the mind being firmly fixed, unified on the object.
And you need to master the state.
Yes, true mastery involves developing 5 specific abilities. Adverting, being able to turn attention to the factors. Attaining, entering jhana at will. Resolving, staying absorbed for a predetermined time. Emerging, coming out exactly when intended. And reviewing, reflecting on the factors afterwards.
And this process continues for higher jhanas, 2nd, 3rd, 4th.
Exactly. The process is similar for each step. You master the current jhana, then reflect on its limitations or faults, for example. The presence of thinking, vitakka vikara, in the first jhana is seen as coarser than the stillness of the second. You see the advantages of the next, higher state. Then you reestablish concentration on the counterpart sign with the intention of reaching that higher state.
So what drops away?
In the second jhana, initial and sustained application, vitakka and vikara, fall away. Concentration becomes more effortless, accompanied only by joy, happiness, and one-pointedness. To reach the third jhana, you see the relative agitation of joy and transcend it, leaving only the profound happiness and one-pointedness.
And the 4th jhana. This is where that incredible thing with the breath happens.
Yes. The 4th jhana is reached by seeing even the subtle excitation of happiness as a fault compared to pure equanimity. So happiness fades, leaving only deep, profound equanimity, upekkara, and one-pointedness. And it's with the attainment of this 4th jhana, our sources consistently state that the breath stops completely. Utter stillness of the bodily formation. Yet, remarkably, the tests assure us one is not harmed by this in the least.
Complete cessation of breath.
It marks the full calming of the breath body, the completion of that stage in the practice. It sounds extraordinary, but it's presented as a verifiable experiential outcome of deep concentration.
Okay, so this brings us back to the what. What is this sign, this nimitta, this brilliant light that can appear? Is it just, a hallucination? Is it some kind of magic?
The texts are very clear. It is not magic. Though it might seem magical, it's described as the outcome of a deeply intensified and profoundly concentrated mind. An ordinary, scattered, distracted mind simply cannot generate a nimitta. It requires that deep purification from hindrances and unification of focus.
So where does it come from? What's the explanation?
This is where the Abhidhamma, the Buddhist system of mind analysis, offers a fascinating explanation. It talks about consciousness being based ultimately in the heart base. And it says that every moment of consciousness arising there can generate subtle material phenomena called consciousness-born rupakalpas. Tiny particles containing fundamental elements, including color.
Particles generated by thought.
By consciousness, yes. Now, ordinary consciousness generates these too, but when you develop powerful serenity meditation consciousness, one that transcends attachment to sensual pleasures, it produces a huge number of these particles internally.
And these particles have color.
Exactly. The color element within these specific consciousness-born particles becomes exceptionally bright. And because they are arising incredibly rapidly, simultaneously, and in succession, their individual colors merge, creating the perception of a stable, brilliant inner light. The analogy given is like electrons flowing in an electric bulb, individually tiny, but together creating visible light.
That's an amazing explanation. Is that the only source of the light?
There's another factor mentioned, the fire element, or energy teho, within these consciousness-born particles also generates its own secondary particles called temperature-born kalapas. And these also manifest bright color, so it's a compounding effect.
And this light can appear internally and externally.
Yes, it can manifest seemingly internally, or right under the nostrils where the focus is, or even radiate outwards, seemingly in all directions. Someone experiencing a strong nimitta might find a pitch-dark room appears brilliantly illuminated to them. The potential intensity is described as immense depending on the power of the concentration. The text mentioned the disciple Anuruddha, renowned for his divine eye, whose meditation consciousness supposedly produced light spanning 1,000 world systems.
Incredible. A tangible sign of the mind's power.
A very tangible sign. And it's worth remembering, the Buddha defined right concentration, a key part of the path, specifically as the attainment of these first four jhānas, which are reached via this counterpart sign.
Wow, what an absolutely incredible journey we've mapped out today. From the simple act of watching the breath, all the way to these profound states of jhana, gaining insight, understanding the hindrances, and even exploring the nature of this luminous sign in consciousness itself.
Yeah, the goal of this deep dive was really to give you that quick but thorough grounding, to connect the dots from these ancient sources and show how these practices offer, well, a really unique path, a path to mental clarity, sure, but also resilience and genuinely deep insights into the nature of reality and the mind's potential.
So for you listening, maybe here's something to think about, a provocative thought to take away from all this. If, as these ancient sources strongly suggest, your body isn't ultimately yours in the way you think, and if your mind has the latent capacity to generate brilliant light just through focused awareness, what other deeply held assumptions about yourself, about your experience, might start to shift if you were to seriously explore your own concentration? What other aha moments might be waiting down that path if you start using this microscope yourself?
It definitely opens up possibilities.
Indeed. We hope this deep dive has given you plenty to consider and perhaps inspiration to explore further. Thanks for joining us.